Welcome to Hard Script.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She looked at me like I was less than her. Like I should be thankful just to exist in her orbit. You're lucky I even let you touch me, she said. Calm, cold, dismissive. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even blink. I just nodded. That night, I packed a box. Quietly. No anger. No panic. Just precision. The box wasn't large. Just enough to hold a few items, a photo of us from better times, a letter she once wrote when she still meant the words, and the dried flower she'd given me on our first anniversary. Things that used to mean something, until they didn't. I placed it gently on her side of the bed, like a silent punctuation mark. When she came home late and saw it, she paused. Picked it up slowly, like it might explode. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. 2 hours later, I heard her crying in the bathroom. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. But unlike her, I didn't cry. We weren't always like this. There was a time when we talked about building a life, about travel, kids, maybe a house on the coast. She used to look at me like I mattered. But things changed. It wasn't sudden. It was erosion. Small comments. Slight shifts. A sigh when I spoke. An eye roll when I offered help. A delayed reply to, I love you. That night's comment was just the crack in the wall finally echoing loud enough to hear. You're lucky I even let you touch me. She didn't mean touch as in intimacy. She meant access. She saw herself as a prize I didn't deserve. That box wasn't revenge. It was recognition. A silent declaration. I'm awake now. And once you wake up, you don't go back to sleep. I didn't storm out. I didn't throw accusations. I didn't post online. I did something worse. I let her sit in silence, with a box full of reminders that something beautiful died. And she didn't notice until it was too late. That's when the story truly began. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing happened. She even smiled. The kind of smile that shows teeth but no warmth. I watched her wrap a silk scarf around her neck like she was going to war, not work. She moved with that usual efficiency, measured steps, perfect eyeliner, clean perfume. Nothing in her movements hinted at the night before. Except her hands were shaking slightly when she poured the coffee. Still, she said it like it was any other morning. Don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning, okay? As if my silence didn't fill the room like smoke. I nodded, but I didn't say a word. She was good at pretending, but I'd gotten better at noticing. She laughed too hard on phone calls I wasn't supposed to hear. She left texts half-hidden on the kitchen counter, tilted just enough for plausible deniability. She changed her passwords, not because she was hiding something, but because she needed me to notice that she was. I wasn't stupid. I just wanted to believe in us longer than I should have. But the signs were there. That morning, she wore the earrings she only put on when she met him. She didn't tell me who he was. She never said his name. But she had a different tone after their conversations. A softer tone. One she hadn't used with me in months. At lunch, she sent me a text. Thinking of you. Hope you're okay. I stared at it for 5 full minutes before locking my phone and putting it back in my pocket. I wasn't okay. But I wasn't falling apart either. There's a kind of strength in stillness. In not reacting. In letting the mask slip, not yours, but theirs. She was trying to keep the image alive, the sweet, busy, caring woman. A mask layered with plausible kindness. But masks crack under silence. That evening, she asked if I wanted to watch something together. Something light, she said. We could use a laugh. I nodded again. She sat close, legs tucked under her, stealing glances when she thought I wasn't looking. I didn't move away. But I didn't lean in either. It wasn't punishment. It was observation. She needed me to act like things were normal. But I had stopped performing. Later, she reached for the box on her nightstand. She didn't open it again. She just held it in her hands. And I realized something. She wasn't crying because I hurt her. She was crying because I didn't beg her to stay. I kept replaying the moment in my head. Not because I didn't believe it happened, but because I needed to break it down. You're lucky I even let you touch me. It wasn't about touch. Not really. She didn't mean physical. She meant emotional access. Presence. Space in her world. She was telling me that I was beneath her. That I was tolerated. And somewhere along the way, I had let her believe that was true. I wasn't always this quiet. I used to fight for us. Raise concerns. Try to talk things out. But every time I brought up how distant she felt, she'd say things like, You're overthinking. You're being sensitive. Not everything is about you. At first, I believed her. I thought I was asking for too much. I thought I had to work harder to be worthy. But that's how erosion works. Not with explosions, but with silence that stretches too long. I started noticing what she never said. She used to say, "I love you," first. Now she said, "Drive safe." She used to ask how my day was. Now she just told me about hers. She didn't lie. But truth isn't just what's spoken, it's also what's left out. She stopped making room for me in the little things. That's where the real distance begins, not in cheating, not in yelling, but in the absence of inclusion. When she said I was lucky to touch her, it was her way of rewriting the power dynamic. Like she was the sun, and I should orbit quietly. But here's the thing, I wasn't orbiting anymore. I was observing. From the outside, our life still looked polished. Couple photos. Shared routines. We still paid bills on time and made dinner together twice a week. But intimacy had left the building. I realized that she didn't fall out of love. She fell out of respect. And once that's gone, love becomes theater. So I asked myself a hard question. What did I do to let it get here? And I had to face a truth I didn't want to admit. I let too many things slide. I accepted surface affection. I let her treat my silence as weakness instead of patience. I wasn't the victim. I was the one who stayed too long after the respect left the room. She didn't change overnight. Neither did I. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being a man she looked up to and became a man she tolerated. And that's on me. But it also meant I could end it. Quietly. Strategically. Without drama. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally saw her clearly. And once clarity arrives, the story has no choice but to shift. It was Saturday morning. Gray light came through the curtains, and the silence between us felt louder than any argument. She sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone with the same expression she used when reading the news, distant, mildly irritated, emotionally unavailable. I made coffee for both of us. No grand gesture. Just habit. I handed her the mug. She didn't say thank you. Then she spoke. Calmly. Clearly. Like a statement she'd rehearsed. "You're not who you used to be." That was the phrase. No shouting. No emotion. Just words delivered like a status update. I didn't answer. I just sat down across from her, letting the words sink in. She didn't look up from her phone. She didn't need to. That phrase was loaded. It meant, "You've become inconvenient." It meant, "I miss the version of you who didn't question me." It meant, "You've started seeing through me, and I don't like it." But I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I wanted her to keep talking. She didn't. She just got up, walked to the mirror, and started fixing her hair. Like she hadn't just dropped a grenade in the room. "You're not who you used to be." She said it like it was a flaw. Like growth was something offensive. And maybe I wasn't the same man. Maybe I had changed. But that change didn't come out of nowhere. It came from nights spent wondering if I was enough. It came from watching her pull further away every time I reached closer. It came from realizing that I was holding on to a version of her that no longer existed. She used to look at me like I was a map. Like I had direction, purpose, weight. Now she looked at me like I was a detour. And that morning, I finally understood something. She didn't want partnership. She wanted permission. To drift. To detach. And for me to stay still while she did it. But I was no longer still. Her phrase didn't hurt me the way she expected it to. It didn't cut. It confirmed. I had outgrown the version of myself who begged for attention. The man who explained himself just to keep the peace. The man who shrank in order to make room for her chaos. I had changed. And for the first time, I wasn't sorry about it. She left that morning with her hair perfect, her tone light. She even kissed my cheek on the way out. As if her sentence hadn't just buried what was left of us. But I didn't flinch. I just sat in that silence. And in that silence, a decision began to form. Because if she thought I wasn't the man I used to be, she was right. And soon, she'd find out just how much that meant. After that morning, I stopped reacting. I didn't check her tone. Didn't ask where she was going. Didn't text to see if she got home safe. I became quiet in a way that made the room colder. Not out of spite, out of calculation. I needed to decide what kind of ending this would be. There were 3 options. Option 1. Leave. Pack my things while she was gone. Walk out with no fight. No speech. Disappear like a chapter closing. Pros, clean. Final. Clear. Cons. She might turn the story into something it wasn't. She might tell herself I gave up, that I couldn't handle her. She might feel relief instead of loss. And I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. Not from her, from myself. Option 2. Stay but change the rules. Withdraw emotionally. Protect what's left of my peace. Let her live her illusion while I quietly prepare my exit. Pros: strategic. Gives me control. Cons: high risk of bitterness. I didn't want to become the man who punishes with silence. I wasn't here to win a Cold War. But part of me needed time. Not to forgive. To observe. To see if there was still anything behind her eyes. Option 3, confront. Lay it out on the table. Tell her what I see. Not to argue, to reveal. Pros: honest. Potentially freeing. Cons: it could backfire. She might twist my words, cry at the right time, or shift blame in ways she'd practiced. And once you speak the truth to someone who denies it, they either wake up or weaponize it. I wasn't sure which version of her would answer, but I was close to finding out. The hardest part wasn't choosing. It was accepting that I had to choose. No more waiting for her to change. No more believing that time fixes distance. This was about clarity now. About not lying to myself just to keep things stable. That week, I started watching her with different eyes. How she laughed on the phone when I wasn't in the room. How she kept turning her phone face down when I walked in. How her voice softened when she talked to someone she used to work with. I wasn't looking for proof. I was testing my resolve. And every small detail was a confirmation. So I made my decision. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't expose her. But I also wouldn't protect her from the consequences of treating me like an option. I chose a hybrid of all three options. Stay for now. Withdraw internally. And prepare for something irreversible. Not to hurt her, but to ensure I never again stayed somewhere I wasn't seen. The first move wasn't dramatic. There was no door slammed. No speech. It was small. Intentional. Precise. I started coming home later. Not suspiciously late. Just unavailable. When she asked if I'd be home for dinner, I'd say, "Don't wait up," and then leave it at that. I didn't say where I was going. Sometimes I wasn't going anywhere at all. I'd sit in the car, parked 2 blocks away, watching the sky change color, letting the silence become louder than her voice had ever been. Other nights, I'd go to a quiet bar I used to like before we moved in together. I didn't flirt. I didn't drink too much. I just sat, present, remembering who I was before her voice rewrote my value. At home, I stopped filling the silence. When she talked about her day, I didn't lean in. I nodded, but didn't chase the conversation. I let the weight of her own monologue sit heavy between us. And that's when the shift started. She noticed. Not immediately, but gradually. She asked if I was okay. I said, "I'm thinking." That was true, but not about what she assumed. I moved my things out of the shared closet, hung my jackets in the hallway instead, switched my toothbrush to the guest bathroom. When she noticed, she asked, "Why the change?" I told her I needed more space. She laughed awkwardly. "You sound like me now." I didn't correct her, because in a way, she was right. She'd spent months asking for space. Now she was finally seeing what it felt like. The first time she reached for me in bed and I didn't respond. She didn't say anything. She just laid there, motionless, as if waiting for her world to realign. But I had already shifted. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity. I wasn't punishing her. I was detaching. Not emotionally. Strategically. I was done playing the role of the grateful man trying to earn basic respect. One night, I stayed out later than usual. When I came home, she was sitting at the kitchen table. No lights on except the one above her. She looked up like she had something prepared. But when she saw my face, she lost the script. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled. A real one. Small, calm. I am now. Then I walked past her, poured a glass of water, and left the room. That was my first real move. Not walking away physically, but shifting the axis of power. From needing her validation to reclaiming my own clarity. She didn't understand it yet, but she felt it. And people always feel what they can't name. When a system starts to lose power, it doesn't panic at first. It recalibrates. Subtly, quietly, strategically. That's what she did. She didn't scream. Didn't accuse me of being distant. She changed tactics. Suddenly, she was kinder. She made breakfast again. She asked if I wanted to join her for a walk. The same woman who hadn't noticed me in weeks now studied my face like it held the answers to her test. I saw it for what it was. Not love. Not guilt. Control maintenance. When she sensed she couldn't predict me anymore, she shifted from indifference to attention. But it was late. Too late. Because once a man feels the air outside the cage, he doesn't forget how it tastes. One night, she brought home my favorite wine. She made the pasta I used to ask for when things were good. We ate together. Candlelight. Quiet music. She even smiled the way she used to, soft, inviting. "I've been thinking a lot lately," she said. I nodded. Let her speak. She told me she wanted us to travel. Just get away for a bit. Remember who we were. That line might have worked 6 months ago. But now, it sounded like a retreat, not a rescue. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just looked at her and said, "Why now?" She hesitated. Just for a moment. But it was enough. Because she didn't expect me to question the offer. After that dinner, she tried harder. Suddenly, she wanted to sit closer on the couch. She started tagging me in old photos online, the ones with forced smiles and filters. She laughed louder at jokes that weren't funny. She was performing. Not out of affection, out of uncertainty. She had felt me slip out of her emotional economy. And people only start to notice what they took for granted, when they realize it might not come back. The more I pulled inward, the more she reached out. But not with honesty. With tactics. Her compliments came late. Her kindness was borrowed. Even her silence was calculated. She was trying to reel me back in. But I wasn't biting. Because this wasn't who she was. It was who she became when she sensed the mirror cracking. She started asking about my day again. Offered to drive me to work. Even joked, "What? You seeing someone?" Like it was funny. But her eyes weren't smiling. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. And in that moment, I saw the fear behind her smile. She knew I wasn't chasing anymore. That's what scared her. Not that I might leave, but that I could stay and still not belong to her anymore. A man sitting across the table. Present in body, but unreachable in spirit. And that was something she never planned for. It happened on a Wednesday. A normal evening. Rain tapping on the windows, the smell of her new vanilla candle in the hallway. She was in the shower. Her phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I didn't touch it. I didn't snoop. I wasn't looking for anything. But the screen lit again. And this time, it showed the preview. "He's getting cold." I think I pushed too hard. That's all it said. 12 words. 12 words that erased months of doubt. I stood there. Not angry. Not shocked. Just still. That stillness where clarity lives. The sender's name wasn't saved. Just a number. No emojis. No hearts. Just business. A report. Like I was an experiment she was updating someone on. Not a man. Not her partner. A project. She came out of the shower minutes later, hair wrapped in a towel, humming. She walked right past me, didn't notice my eyes. She picked up the phone, glanced at it, and paused. Just for a fraction of a second. That's when I knew. She realized what I'd seen. She didn't say anything. Didn't ask. Didn't explain. She just put the phone down and went to the bedroom. Quiet. Controlled. Like nothing had happened. That silence was louder than any confession. She didn't deny it. Because she knew the message spoke for itself. She had been narrating my decline to someone else. Tracking my emotional distance like a game score. Pushed too hard. As if I was a button. As if my pain was a dial she could fine-tune. Later that night, she made tea for both of us. Sat down across from me at the table. We didn't talk. She didn't apologize. I didn't ask questions. We just sat there in that heavy silence. Two actors waiting for a script that wouldn't come. But inside, something shifted permanently. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt closure. Not because of betrayal, but because of the realization that I was never really seen. Only studied. She thought she was managing me. Reading my reactions. Calculating how far I'd drift before snapping back. But I wasn't drifting anymore. I was disappearing. Not out of weakness. Out of resolve. The irony was, her biggest mistake wasn't the message. It was believing I wouldn't recognize what it meant. That I'd flinch, or beg, or break. That I'd feel scared enough to stay. But I didn't feel fear. I felt something cleaner. Sharper. Detachment. The kind you don't recover from. I didn't say I was leaving. I didn't write a note. I didn't slam the door. I just made a quiet decision. And then acted on it. That weekend, I booked a short-term rental across town. Nothing dramatic. 1 suitcase. Laptop. 2 books. No big goodbye. No conversation. No checklist of who hurt who worse. Just silence. My silence. Owned and chosen. She was out with friends when I left. Or at least, that's what she said. I didn't check. Didn't care. She came home to find the house exactly the same. Except for one small change. The guest bathroom was empty. My coat was gone. And on the table was a key. No note. No message. No closure script. Just a key. In the absence of me. I didn't block her. I didn't ghost her. I just removed myself from the role she'd assigned me, the one where I orbit, absorb, tolerate. That role was dead. I didn't need her to admit what she'd done. I needed her to feel the space I left behind. She texted that night, "Where are you?" I didn't reply, not out of pettiness, but because the question was too late. She hadn't asked where I was when I was sitting 3 feet from her, eating dinner in silence, watching her scroll through a world I wasn't part of. She only noticed my location once I was no longer available for analysis. The next day, she tried a softer tone. "Can we talk?" I muted the notification, closed the app, went back to reading, not because I didn't care, but because I cared enough about myself to not repeat the cycle. My final move wasn't departure. It was disconnection, not revenge, not punishment, just peace. The kind that comes when you stop arguing with reality. She called once. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She would fill in the blanks herself. And that, I realized, was the part that would haunt her. Not what I said, but what I didn't. "No, you did this. No, I'm done." No anger. Just absence. Measured. Final. Quiet. That's the part people never expect. When the one who waited too long to be seen stops asking to be noticed. It's strange how quiet freedom feels. There's no parade. No background music. Just space. That first morning waking up alone. I expected some kind of grief, regret, loneliness, but all I felt was stillness and peace, wrapped in the kind of silence that doesn't ask for anything. She kept texting. Not every hour, not desperate, but consistent. "I just want to talk. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. We can fix this." But I didn't answer, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And when a man is done, there's nothing left to fight over. Some people think closure comes from words, from one last conversation, a final cry. But real closure doesn't need an audience. It arrives quietly, when you realize the version of them you loved doesn't exist anymore. Maybe never did. I didn't delete her number, didn't block her on social media. That would have meant she still held emotional weight. But she didn't. Not anymore. I didn't hate her. I just didn't belong to her story anymore. A week later, she sent a longer message. "I know I broke something in you. I saw it too late. But if you ever come back, I'll be different." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't manipulative. It was honest, or close to it. But honesty loses power when it arrives after you've already left the room. I didn't reply, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because she wasn't speaking to me. She was speaking to the version of me that waited too long for her to care. And that man didn't live here anymore. Sometimes I still walk past our old street, not to revisit, just to remind myself what it cost to stay quiet that long. I don't hate her. I don't miss her. I remember her. That's all. And as for the ending, it didn't come with a door slamming or a screaming match. It came in the shape of a key left on a table, a toothbrush missing from the sink, a man who chose stillness over survival. She may tell the story differently, that I walked out, that I gave up, that I changed. And she'd be right. I did change, but not out of anger, out of clarity. This wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about remembering who I was. Before I let someone confuse my silence with weakness, I didn't close the door to punish her. I left it open now, so she'd feel the draft. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.